In today's complex business environment, leaders need not only to be prepared for the worst, but also to build their resilience. At the Human Factor, Corporate Integrity Matters' Sonja Sterneman invites top executives, board members, and industry experts to reflect and talk about the realities of corporate integrity, risk, and ethical leadership. As an international governance authority, independent director, and entrepreneur, she understands the challenges leaders face. Integrity and ethical leadership are not just principles. They build resilience, enhance reputation, and create strategic competitive advantage for organizations and for individuals.
Today, I'm honored to welcome Anja Seele. Anja Seele currently serves as Chief Compliance Officer for Tele Columbus in the telecommunication industry. She has worked for 18 years, both in-house and as a compliance advisor and forensic specialist, and obtained broad cross-industry experience. Rooted in her early academic background in social psychology, she has spent over 2 decades focusing on one core mission: inspiring people to engage with compliance not out of obligation, but out of conviction. Her approach transforms compliance from something people feel they have to do into something they want to be part of. With this mindset, she develops and implements compliance management systems in broader sense, under different frameworks: compliance, risk, integrity, sustainability, and people management. As a hands-on practitioner, she combines strategic design with cultural depth to build systems that are effective, resilient, and meaningful. So, welcome, Anja. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And we already had a pre-discussion, which was so interesting. And I think we really had to switch away from all the questions we already discussed, I think weeks or months ago. And I would really like to start with one quote you mentioned before, saying, "Emotion eats compliance for breakfast." And I would like to open with that. Is that okay for you?
Of course. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for having me, Sonja. It's wonderful to be here. And what a great topic. So, yes, emotion eats compliance for breakfast.
What kind of emotion are you talking about? Because I think there are so many emotions, and we are now here in a more or less rather business and leadership related podcast and conversation. I would really like to dig deeper into that part, because I know you have your reasons. You have more than 20 years of professional experience in compliance and, of course, a lot of stories to tell.
Yes, of course. So, if it comes to compliance, we often think about this topic, and this is something we put into our policies, into our code of conduct. It's always follow the rules, stick by the rules. But are we really able and really willing to defend our rules? This is something I come across, because if you don't really feel them, so that's what we talk about, and that's why we're talking about emotions. If you don't really mean it, you are not willing to really defend them. So to really, implement them.
I think the problem, or what I see is, are we not over-regulated? Because what I see, especially now, also when we talk about the financial services industry, the regulation increased over the last 30 years, and even more over the last 5 years, and in Switzerland even more about the last 2 years. And sometimes it really feels it's over-regulated. How should I feel that this kind of over-regulation also helps our organization? Because we are entrepreneurs, we have to make money, we have our vision, we have our strategy. And sometimes the regulation could also be not really supporting.
To put it mildly, I'd say. So I think there are a couple of institutions and even the company leaders which think that if something bad happens, you just have to put in place more controls, more rules, more regulation to fix the problem and to fix the process and avoid things happening again. But I think this is much too short. Because if you really think and dig a bit deeper on why this situation has happened, would allow those person to really misbehave, we are in a completely different discussion. And so only sticking by the rules or following the rules, and especially in those days, the amount of different rules and regulation one has to apply, you get lost, and I think you sometimes even get lost in aligning this with your inner values and the company's values. And this is something I'm really frustrated about. Is there kind of a not only a misalignment, but also is there still the opportunity to align your true values, your path of integrity with those rules you have to apply?
For me, when I hear you right now, and then you also mentioned fixing something, for me, often if they just put another regulation and try to fix, it's a reaction out of weakness and not a reaction out of understanding what's going on. Because what I also recognize in different industries, that putting more controls and more rules doesn't mean you are more protected against non-compliance, for example, because people just tick the box, even though they don't know why they have to do that. There are a lot of controls which are not really impactful, I think. But on the other hand, the most important risks are often overlooked.
Absolutely. So if we start just compliance, putting compliance in place like a window dressing, then there is no real, no real value in behind and no really path to follow. So only if you really understand why those regulations, why those processes, why those controls is in place, then you are more likely as an employee to follow those requirements.
Absolutely.
And if there seems to be no meaning in behind, this really seems to be an box ticking exercise, and of course it can't get taken serious. It can't, because there's no meaning in behind.
I would like to go back to your expression before, saying that compliance used as a window dressing function. Could you give us a little bit more examples, maybe also use cases you saw over the last few years? You mentioned one, and I hope you also go back to that, because I think that's something everybody listening and now here in our audience knows about it. Either they have seen that as a compliance officer or as an auditor, or maybe they are also responsible for these kind of policies.
Yeah, so from my perspective, the most interesting policy is the car policy, because it's the most emotional policy in the whole company. Why? Because we are not talking about potential violation of criminal code or health and safety or other legal requirements. But we are talking about a policy which is put in place by the purchasing or the finance department. So focusing on, of course, of numbers, deciding on which kind of hierarchy level should drive which kind of car, to have a clear look and to have a clear overview on, of course, on the numbers. So this has nothing to do really with any kind of violation of law. But if you look into the companies, of course, there is a widespread in, car differentiation. And
of course, I think that isn't it just, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but isn't it also the goal of a car policy to make hierarchy visible? It's like having the corner office, or I don't know, the chair with the different size.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I think
the
it also
amount
goes.
of windows is
Exactly. It's also important. I think.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I think the car policy is exactly that. It's an internal rule. It's an internal policy to ensure that people absolutely understand where they belong to.
On the one hand side, absolutely. And this is defined by, again, and then the finance department. But if you come to the company, you
Is it
often
defined?
see,
Is it defined by the finance department? Is it not defined by the board, the executive board, or the non-executive board?
usually it's designed by, let's say, the fleet guys and approved, of course, by the board. But nevertheless, if you come to the company, and this is my point, you will see more variation than usually planned in the fleet, in the actual fleet.
So it
So
means
why is
it's
that?
not followed through at all.
It is not followed through because, of course, the car policy might stipulate strict rules, but the individual requests are nevertheless often approved by management, which is understandable from a motivational perspective. Of course, if you want to hire the one sales guy, this really high performant manager, you have to be, let's say, more flexible. You might feel that. But on the other hand, this breach of a policy is not only a possible burden to the environmental balance sheet. It has, of course, financial consequences for the fleet management and the maintenance and all this. In the first place, it sends a visible signal of the inconsistency of the tolerance of a rule violation and unequal treatment.
Yeah. And it's also signaling what kind of culture are we allowing and living in our organization.
Yes. Do we tolerate? Are we really willing to tolerate, this kind of approach? And so there's no violation of law. There's no, I think that's why it's such a wonderful example. So there are obviously rules in place, set in place, approved by management. And nevertheless, there are exceptions. And
so
those exceptions are the really, really powerful,
And
if
it also
I
means
am the
it's
one,
the risk, it's the huge risk you have, and it's a homemade risk with these kind of policies you have in place, which are only internal, but demonstrating that we are tolerating this kind of behavior.
of course, and we are signaling it actively. And this is something that is seen throughout the whole company. This is a visible signal. I think if you have a look into this from this perspective, it's quite a costly one. It's quite a costly one because if you act like this and management is allowed and willing to violate their own rules, this really has consequences for the corporate culture. So
absolutely.
all those rules are like, I don't know, well, not really binding. It's like a nice to have, some kind of window dressing, something we haven't really have to follow. And this misalignment brings us in a situation where a manager who wants to be compliant, who says our rules are important and I want to follow them with my team, well, sends a signal of what? My people are not important enough. I don't fight for my people to have nicer cars or something extravagant. And I think this is quite an important and visible situation where you can easily measure how really important and value-based those rules truly are.
Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to these kind of internal rules. And I also thought for myself, we we have to watch our internal rules, because we are also measured and monitored by those from our colleagues, from our peers, from our employees, but I think also from the market, because it's visible, and you can see that also. Now we talk about cars, and then it's especially it is visible, but also when it comes to flights, when it comes to hotels, and all these kind of traveling topics. Most of the time, these are also internal rules. Maybe you also have some other examples. I know that Germany has even more car policies than we have here in Switzerland, because it's not so common here. And so that's also the reason why I think it's super interesting that you come up with that kind of topic right now. But these kind of car policies can really break our culture.
Yes, as simple as that, because the main point, I think, if we come to the perspective on how even culture works out, if the most important thing is to have management and middle management following their rules, so walk the talk, and if you see situations as an employee which they are not in line with all those requirements, this changes, I think, the whole impression of the importance of this more formal framework, I'd say. And if you start with these small bits and pieces, it will change your culture. So this is something important, because you can put it the other way around. So if you stick to the rules, let's say you start with a culture where it's a bit laissez-faire and compliance is not, or this formal framework is not really taken that serious. If you start acting as a role model, executing those rules, sending clear messages, and acting, walk the talk, acting on it, I think that's it. Talk about what you do and talk about what you not do, what you decide to leave out,
and just do it,
because do it. It's visible.
What I say also to my clients, or also coaching clients, is that we are role models 24/7.
Yeah.
And every day of the year, no matter what we do, also when we post anything on social media, when we are on holiday, we are role models and we are seen, even though we often forget it. We have different roles, and we have to be so aware what kind of role do I have in what kind of situation. But no matter what we think, what kind of role we are acting right now, we are seen in the roles the others want to see us. When you are a management team member, or when you are a mother, father, whatever, so you are always seen in all kind of roles you have, depending on the person watching you.
Absolutely. And I think this is something one shouldn't underestimate. I think this is one of the main problems, that perhaps you get the impression as a top management that you are in a bubble. Yeah, which is a bubble without windows. Let's put it like this, yeah. But it's the other way around. It's quite important. And if you feel like you are separated from the rest,
Mm-hmm.
you might act like this. And if you don't take your middle management and your employees with you on this journey, you will lose them.
But
you will
also,
lose them.
It's not only about the employees and your internal stakeholders, but it's also the stakeholders you have outside of the organization, because you are seen by the competitors, you are seen by your potential clients and by your clients, and it's all shaping your reputation as a leader, but also as an organization, because you stand for that organization. And people really forget during holidays what kind of roles they also have. That's just what I observe when I click through all the social media channels, also like LinkedIn, for example, not only the more private ones.
Absolutely. And I think the huge discussion we see around this Coldplay concert
yes. Mm-hmm.
Clearly stipulates this topic. So I think what we expect our top management, let's say our leaders to be, is showing or demonstrating quite a huge amount of integrity. And of course, this is quite a lot to ask for a human being, acting with this responsibility. This is really, this is a huge target and this is a huge goal. But perhaps we should start to put this into our hiring programs. Is
Absolutely.
the question of integrity and the kind of person, the character I am looking for, the one that really supports this kind of value, this kind of path I want to implement and to live throughout my company.
I hope, and I also see that for some kind of some positions in some organizations, exactly these kind of questions are asked. When we hire, for example, board members in the management team members, or operational ones or executive ones, I think depending on the board you have, they are really aware of that they exactly know what kind of person or what kind of integrity they would like to have at the table. But others are maybe a little bit less aware how important it is. And people are also changing over time. And that's also what I have seen, it doesn't mean when you hire now somebody with a high level of integrity, which was maybe also interviewed and you have all kind of information you need to have. We have to make sure that we also review that from time to time and be aware that people change depending on the life situations they are in. And it doesn't mean that it stays like it was when you hire that person. And I think we are sometimes also reluctant of doing that because we think it's done and it works, and we just also overlook it, which is human and human behaviors, and then we all make mistakes. But I think it should also be revisited from time to time.
Absolutely. And you have to assess, additionally, I think the special circumstances within the company. Again, the question of organization, how do we things? How are our management meetings structured? How we work together? Does this really support our values? Does it really support our formal framework, like the compliance framework? And therefore, I think this has to be assessed, truly assessed, clear view, being true with yourself, which is not sometimes not that easy. It could be quite
Journey.
a sensitive topic. Let's put it like this. But you really have to get a clear view on how employees, line managers, top managers feel within the company.
I think it is how they feel within the company, but also what they bring to the company. Because we are all human beings with different parts of our lives, and we bring it to our organizations, but of course we also bring it home to our families and friends. And it's always an interaction between both, and dependencies are there. And we as responsible board members, we have to watch that.
Absolutely. And how do we cope with this? I mean, we are working remote, more and more remote. We are all these home office situations. We are facing less easy controls, and we're not that controllable anymore from our line managers. Of course, we are not. We're at home. I'm far away. So it's quite a digital relationship we have. And how do we make sure that we are still on the same page?
It's an interesting point, because what I see is that people are really coming back to the organizations, and then the home office rules, they are not the ones we had 3 years ago. And more of the time people are back in the office, which I also appreciate, because I think things are, how should I say, you have less misunderstanding, you are more efficient, you see the human behind. I lastly had a discussion with somebody who said, when I'm in the office, things get done because they see me, and it's so easy to just to quickly discuss something. And that's also what I support, because we humans need humans. We think we have friends, our KI is, or artificial intelligence is going to be our friend, but no, it is not. And people need real connection also when they work with each other. And at the end, it really goes down to that. Humans need humans. We need connections. Otherwise, we can't get things done. And we also don't know about the values somebody else has. And also integrity. Integrity is shown when you meet these kind of people.
I totally agree. I performed quite a couple of trainings in the last month, and they were in true classroom. So true people in a room together, and the spirit, the discussions, the exchange of ideas and of problems and concepts and whatever is so different if you put this in a virtual room.
Yep.
It's quite restricted. So if you put this in a real life situation, that really makes a difference, and people take so many such rich experience. I'd say true experience, yeah, and this is that really makes things different, and therefore I think it's more than valuable to say let's shift it like 3 days at home or whatever,
Because
but put them together.
Yes, because otherwise we would not need any car policies anymore if we are all sitting in our home offices. So, no, it was very interesting, Anja. And I just wrote something down. But no, you are not our Mrs. Car policy. But I think it's a nice saying, because I really like that story. And it also shows us that we have to go back and see what kind of internal rules do we have which harm us more than it supports our culture. And if we have that we think about, should we maybe adapt it a little bit, or are we willing to really go through and also demonstrate how important it is? So thank you very much for being here today and also sharing your knowledge. And I think we could also have some other episodes. It would be great if you also give me all our details. It's going to be in the show notes, and I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you. This was another episode of the Human Factor Corporate Integrity Matters, where we uncover the leadership strategies fostering governance, risk awareness, resilience, and strategic foresight. Today, with one of my highly appreciated guests, Anja Seele, guided by the principle that corporate integrity and resilience are foundations of trust and long-term success in unpredictable times. Thank you again for listening, and now take care and nurture your own resilience too.